And this is Geo44, and we're doing solution key, and I'm gonna do it in a different way. I'm not just gonna tell you. I'm gonna kind of set it up and see if you had a problem, if that clarifies what you needed to do, just to do it on your own, and then you can stop the video, do it on your own, and then check to see if you're right. So our objective is to use triangle congruence and corresponding parts of congruent triangles to prove that parts of two triangles are congruent. Okay, so you got to prove triangles are congruent before you can use CP/CTC. For each pair of the triangles here, tell why the two triangles are congruent. Give the congruent statement, then list all the other corresponding parts of the triangles that are congruent. So here's the deal. This is why this works so nice. I can prove these two triangles congruent if I use my brain and I see that angle JKH and angle LKM are vertical angles. So these two are vertical angles, and because of that, I've got angle, angle, side. And I'm going to mark that to make sure it's clear that this is angle, angle, side. Now, it's really important that you be listening to this, so if you're just watching it and writing crap down, it's just junk because you don't know squat. Okay? So let's get going and say, yes, I can prove it by angle, angle, side. And now I have a triangle congruent statement, HJK and MLK. So those two triangles are congruent. Okay? Now, what they say after I prove the triangles, then list all the corresponding parts. Well, I've got angles, okay? And these angles correspond to the other angles. And I have sides. And these sides correspond to the other sides. So my angle H is congruent to angle M in order, okay? And my angle J is congruent to my angle L in order. Then angle K is congruent to angle K because that's where the vertical angles are. Now, here's the thing. The angles I didn't state, H and M, are congruent after I prove the triangles are congruent. We just haven't said anything about it yet, okay? And the same thing, I know HJ is congruent to ML, okay? But the other two sides of these two triangles are congruent as well once I know that the triangles are congruent. So JK and LK are also congruent. HK and MK are also congruent. So I've got to keep that in mind when I'm doing these. Once I prove the triangles are congruent, the rest of the 6 parts that haven't been talked about or stated are congruent as well. So now let's look at problem 2, or this other problem here, part B, I guess. I have these here, and I can use my brain and decide, hey, you know something. This is congruent to itself. I have reflexive property of RPPR. So I can prove the two triangles congruent by side, side, side congruence. Now, triangle congruent statement. Write your triangle congruent statement here. Give it a try, see what's up. Okay. All right, I'm back. And then we got RNP, okay? I decided to go with RNP and then went PQR. Now, here's the thing. R and P have to be in the same spot, however you wrote it. N and Q in the same position in P and R. Now, same idea. I have corresponding angles, okay? So there are corresponding angles here, and there are corresponding sides as well, okay? So let's talk about the corresponding sides too, if they're here. They're the sides. Wow, they're way over there. Okay, so P and R are congruent. Write the congruence of the rest of the angles, and I know RN and PQ are congruent. Write the rest of the sides. Okay. Now, keep in mind, in this triangle, we had side, side, side. So I know these corresponding sides are congruent. And RP and PR and PQR and R and PQ are in order. Now, I didn't say anything about the angles, but the angles themselves are also congruent. Okay, that's the beauty of this congruence. Everything in the shapes are congruent. So that's how we can use corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent, CP/CTC. Okay, and that's what we're going to be using today in our proofs. Now, let's get after a proof. In our number 2, we have angle ABD, which is marked, and CBD marked, ADB and CDB, those are marked. Well, it'd be really cool if this was congruent. Hey, you know, it is because of reflexive property. So I've got given reflexive, and I can prove these two triangles congruent because of side angle. Now, since I can prove those angle side angle, that's pretty darn cool. And I've got a lot of people going, Bloom, you weren't asked to prove the triangles congruent. You were asked to prove these congruent. I have to prove the triangles congruent first. Then I can use corresponding parts of congruent triangles. Ta-da! Okay, so let's write our given. Okay, given's down. Now, remember I said reflexive. And we have to do it in this order because I need reflexive before angle side angle. I've got to go with my reflexive. Now I write my triangle congruent statement. Now, remember, when you have a free open triangle congruent statement to write on these, I will write one and you will write one. You just got to make sure that the corresponding letters in the right positions. I've got ABD, so A and C are in the same position. B and B are in the same position, so is D and D. Okay, and that's because of angle side angle. Now, I was supposed to prove a segment AB congruent segment CB. A, B, C, B. Those two segments, although they're not marked in the original figure, are congruent as soon as I prove the triangle's congruent. So, I know they're congruent by corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay, that's how we're going to use this. We got to prove triangles first. Then we use CP/CTC. Now, our next thing, I'm looking at the triangle. Oops, sorry, wrong picture. Okay, I'm looking at this triangle, and hey, look, it's a reflexive property. So I've got the triangles by side, side, side here. So I've got reflexive and side, side, side. I'll talk about my given and side, side, side. My given's marked. Okay, I can do reflexive property. I got that, and I probably should have marked the other one, but I got reflexive property here. I'm going to be totally rock solid. I got the triangles proved by side, 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 and then I'll prove that M and R that aren't even marked are congruent because of corresponding parts of congruent triangles. So now, we've got this with our given. Given totally done. I got reflexive property, OE and EO. Okay? Now, I've got all three sides of one triangle congruent to all three sides of the other, so I got the two triangles congruent by side, side, side congruence. Now, my next step, I know angle M and angle R are congruent because of corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. We did that up here. As soon as I said the triangles are congruent, everything was congruent, even the stuff I didn't mark. So, let's check out this next one. I'm going to do the plan on these two, and I want you to go to town on writing it. Okay? So, here's the plan. We have this because I can see what's going on here. Oh, wait. I already have angle side here. Boy, this one's pretty nice. Boy, I'm not even sure if I saw that other marking when I set this up, so let's see what if I did. Okay? Well, we got our given, right? I know the triangles are congruent because angle side. Boom! Well, that's kind of nice. CT, RP. Wow. Those are congruent because of CP/CTC. We're done. Okay? And our plan should have been given, angle side, and CP/CTC. Now, let's see if this next one is this easy. Hey, it kind of is. I see something here. I've got to give. I'm going to talk about my given because those are already marked. But then I've got reflexive property, and I get my triangles congruent because of side, angle, side. And then I'm going to use CP/CTC to prove angle S and angle O congruent. Why don't you do this one? Turn it off and do this. No, really, turn it off. Turn it off and do it. Okay. Welcome back. Now, we've got this given. Okay, those are given, that's our given. Now we got reflexive property because we know this is the same. TP is congruent to TP. Reflexive property, then I've got the two triangles congruent because of side angle side congruence. Okay, now angle S and angle O, they're totally congruent because the corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay, now that's what we've got. We've got 4 of these down. Okay, let's see how you doing on this one. Okay, if you did it before and you're starting to feel like you're getting it and you've made some mistakes, that's okay. But I'm going to kind of walk you through a couple because I noticed that we have a perpendicular 2-step in this. So we're going to talk about it. And I'll let you go on the last 3 steps, I believe, is what's going to happen, or 4 steps. So here it is. We have our given. And that's perpendicular. That's perpendicular. Okay, these are congruent. And I have vertical angles. Hey, I got vertical angles. I could prove this by angle, side angle here. So I've got my given, okay, and I got CDE and CBA are right angles. Well, these are right angles because of definition of perpendicular lines, okay? And then all right angles are congruent. So all right angles are congruent, and this is my perpendicular 2-step. I have to say this whenever I see this type of setup, okay? So I got that out of the way. Now, the remainder of this proof is good to go for you to finish. Why don't you give it a try? Really, turn me off. Give it a try. No, come on, turn it off. You can do it. Try it on your own. You just got 4 things to do. Okay, 5. Lied. Okay, welcome back. Now, vertical angles. Okay, I got to talk about them vertical angles. I got B, C, A. C's got to be the middle letter on these vertical angles. And then the other ones are just telling me the orientation. But B is that right angle, C, A. D, right angle, C, E. Now, BC congruent, and segment BC is congruent to segment DC. How do I know? Oh, wait. That's way up there. I was totally confused. Look at that. BC's right there, and we're missing some segments on top of that, aren't we? This should have been like this. I'm telling you, sometimes I wonder about us. We miss everything. Okay, but that's in the given. So, were you looking for that? Sometimes you can split the given up a little bit. Now, I've got that in that, and I've got triangles congruent because of angle side angle. So now, angle A is congruent to angle E. I didn't talk about it, I didn't mark it, but because they're inside the triangles that are congruent to each other in the corresponding parts, I know corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Yay! All right, here it is, boys and girls. Your turn. Turn me off. Make sure you try this on your own. No, really. Okay? I'm just going to give you a hint. I'm going to be able to prove it. You're going to be able to prove this by angle. I wonder, vertical angles. I could probably get that with my brain. Angle, side angle. Okay? So given vertical angles. Triangles congruent because angle, side angle. CPCTC. 4 steps. Go. Write it. Okay. Welcome back. We got our given down. Okay, and as promised, we got vertical angles. I'm going to mark the bad boys up. I'm going to talk about this guy, and I'm going to talk about this guy, and this guy. And we're off to the races. Okay, now, order matters. ZAY, CAB, vertical angle theorem. Now, I have the triangles congruent. I just spent time making sure that those were all lined up correctly, so I'm going to use that and say it's triangles instead of angles by angle, side angle. My last step, I've got segment AZ congruent to segment AC because of CPCTC. All right, folks, that's what we got for this. I hope you're understanding it better. make sure you do your 4 or 6 notes today. Get on and do your 4 or 6 notes, and we'll talk about those other things tomorrow. Okay, thank you so much for your work. And as always, I'm Mr. Bloom, and you're not.